in the back of minds when we do produce content. So even some of our longest episodes sometimes don't even break 100 megabytes in data size because we've been compressing our files from the jump. So I don't think we run into a lot of those same issues. Some of our longest episodes are still under 100 megabytes, and people ask us, how do you do it? I'm like, we just compress our episodes. But it sounds so, we come from audio background, so we've just kind of figured out how to use our knowledge of technology to give us an advantage.
Are you editing your own podcast, or you have people that do that? A lot of time,
when we're on the go,
you are editing. Okay.
When we're on the go, yes, but if we're in the city, like we can send our stuff to engineers and they take care of it. They know what we like, we get it done, we send them what we need to send them, and they shoot it back to us, and boom, it's done.
Nice. Ekua and Mazuba, are you editing yourself?
Yes, I am YouTube University. You know, you learn as you go. It is fun, and you mess up and you delete things and you try to get it back. But yes, no, definitely self-editing.
I pay someone to edit because I try to teach myself how to edit. I try to teach myself how to edit, and I just didn't have the patience for it. And I'm in grad school right now, so I'm writing 25-page papers like all the time. So it's just I don't have the time. But I am paying someone that's on the continent, so I think of it as like, you know, not helping somebody, but like paying someone for their skill. So no, I just send it to somebody and then they send it back to me and we go back and forth and yeah.
And I was kidding, but not really kidding about music for your podcast, because I know that's a consideration that a lot of people have to have when you're creating a podcast. Either you get it specially made, or you have clearance, or you're paying people to have that music. I mean, something as small as having music on your podcast, people think you just put it on there, but you actually legally cannot.
Yeah.
So what are some steps or just learnings that you've experienced?
So I don't put like copywritten music on my podcast because the logistics of that can just get can actually, like, you know, if you were gonna upload something in a week, it can delay you completely. So, but yeah, I had that made again in the first iterations, and I've stuck with it. I've loved it. It's something that has kind of carried through since the beginning, and it speaks to my voice. I feel like it sounds really well with it. So yeah.
Music. So only the trailer that I played has music. Every other episode, it's like there's no music because again of that. But I know there are some sites where you can get like free music legally. But then one episode that I did have music. I have a friend who's a musician. So she allowed me to use one of her songs for the episode. So I guess if you've got any friends who are musicians, find ways of not using them, but like you can pay them. But like I just collaboration with people. Like if you have a photographer, they can take the picture that's going to be your logo. If you have a graphic designer friend, then you can trade, and they can be a guest on your podcast, for instance, as a trade-off. So just use your community.
Tunde and Bawo, I know you talk about Afro beats. Do you play the Afro beats on there?
Well, yeah. I mean, so. Aside from the intro music, if you go to the earlier episodes, I used to create up all those themes.
Tunde's the producer, by the way. He's trying to be humble about it. Go ahead.
Oh, that's cool. So we did that for a while, but as our episodes got longer and longer, we just started shortening the intros, and eventually we just put like a 5-second clip. But as far as music in the podcast, in the beginning, SoundCloud used to flag everything. Even though they were like, oh yeah, come upload your stuff with us, do whatever you want. They were like, oh, actually you can't put that song by WizKid in this because Sony owns it. I'm like, but WizKid literally hit us directly and said we're good. It's like, oh yeah, we heard you, but you gotta get like a letter from legal and da-da-da. And even when we got those like letters, it was still a headache. So we were just like, let's pause on the music. There was a period of months where we didn't have any music, it was just talk. But I think that time was important because we developed our conversational, our dialogue skills in that period. And then when we were able to figure out a legal situation with all the labels and start to put more music back in our stuff, everything was fine. So now we're in a place where we can pretty much do it what we want.
And it also helped us push upcoming acts, because at the end of the episode we would have Song of the Week on our podcast, and we would have upcoming acts. So we would have friends or just songs we like, would reach out to them before the episode, and I feel a lot better playing an upcoming act than a main artist, because I feel like you're gaining a relationship with the artist, and you're also helping out where the big artist, it's not necessarily introducing the listener to a new song. Like you know.
A lot of times we put each other on the music every time we record. Like he put me onto an artist that he has he's friends with in real life, Bills. I met Bills through the podcast, and he was just like, yo, put my boy Bills on. I'm like, all right. And it was actually dope. And it worked out. We ended up interviewing him later in the year, but things like that. But also, what was I going with this? I had a thought, and I forgot about it. I'll come back.
Come back to it. What if some, not everyone is a great interviewer, right? People think sometimes, oh, I'm a good conversationalist, doesn't mean you're a good interviewer, right? So what are some ways that you have, besides that time when you couldn't play music, some other ways that you have used to kind of strengthen the art of the interview?
Can I just say you're a great interviewer, by the way? Can we get a round of applause? You're a great interviewer. That is all.
Well done. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Afrobeat, Joanna, right? So that's a prime example of a record that was already big in the UK, but we, again, move around so much. I sent the record to Bawo. I was like, Bawo, you ever heard this record? This was like 2017.
A couple months after it came out.
Yeah. And it was kind of bubbling in the UK, but it wasn't even on the radio there yet. And Afrobeat, he's a DJ in the UK. So I sent the record, he never heard it, boom. So I was like, let's just use this as my song of the week. Months later, it pops off in the summer out here, and he's doing he's doing La Marina. He's got
Wait, what song?
Joanna Drogba by Afrobeat. Yeah, so we debuted it. So he DM'd us when we put it on the podcast, and we tagged him and everything. He was like, yo, thank you, da-da-da-da. And then WizKid saw our tweet and was like, oh yeah, gotta do a remix. So that whole thing, that whole conversation.
But instrumental.
That whole conversation happened because we took a chance on an artist that we thought the record was dope, but we couldn't really convince anyone in the Afrobeat space to give it a shot. And then once WizKid jumped on it, everybody was like, oh, this is the biggest record of the year. And I'm like, all right, okay.
Yeah, late.
We're done.
To answer your question, no, but honestly, even what Tunde was saying, it really just speaks to your confidence. You have to be confident in what you represent, and at the same time too, I would definitely encourage you to have outside conversations with the people that you bring onto your show before you have them on the show. Build that rapport, get to know them as a person. I find the best interviews, quote unquote, that I've done have been conversations, and it dives into various parts of who they are, and people resonate with authenticity always. So we can tell when things are kind of surface level, and you never want to do that on a podcast. You want to get the in-depth story. You want to see where their mind's at. You want to, if they need to shed a tear, let them. It really is about getting into that emotion.
Yeah, I think the conversation before the interview is just as important, like you're saying, because there has to be a comfort between you and the guest. A lot of good conversation, good interviews we've had dialogue before, just gotten to know the person and they know us. So when the conversation happens, it's just it's between the both of you. Obviously, it's being recorded. So I think the conversation before matters. And also knowing that, okay, I'm gonna ask this question and I want to get this information out of this person beforehand, so you get them comfortable and get the conversation going and get the questions that leads to what it is you want out the person.
Some of it's really natural and some of it isn't. So a lot of people can tell in our interviews that we've done who we know in real life just based on how the conversation's going, and the ones we kind of have to get to know as the conversations are going as well. So some people are good interviewers naturally, some people aren't. I think it's just about when you talk to people in real life. Some people just have awkward energy when you talk to them, and it's going to be a weird conversation.
Warm them up.
Some people can't get warm.
Yeah.
You got to just cut your losses and just let them be, you know what I'm saying? Let them be icy.
Yeah.
And practice is important too. I think I talk to myself all the time, just in my house, my apartment.
Whoa.
It helps. If you're about to present something, you have to rehearse it. So even if you're on a bus or you're on the subway, play the conversation in your mind and then imagine what their response to what your question is going to be. And then you could even practice with a friend, just tell your friend to pretend to be the guest, give her the script. And I think that's why it also kind of helps to have conversation guidelines or kind of a script, which I send to my guests 2 weeks before I interview them. I send them this is what I'm going to ask you, and then they can let me know what they don't want to answer or what they want changed or what they want amended, so that when the interview happens, they know they're not caught off guard. I'm not asking them a question that they're not comfortable answering. And my mother always reminds me to speak slowly as well, because I tend to speak fast, but just, keeping that in the back of my mind helps with the interviews. So.
Let's talk about money. Who's making money?
I think the Wahala guys are probably making money.
Let me move over to
Wait, aren't you?
All this hearsay.
Aren't you Ekua from last night?
Who's that?
So I bring that
Aren't
up.
you Mwende Bwino over there?
I bring that up because a lot of non-Black podcasters are making a lot of money from this. People are making podcasting their their main job, right? And I think how do we monetize better, right? As podcast creators of color, podcast creators from the continent, how do you find, maybe we don't know the answer, but just kind of opening it up, like what are the ways that you've seen?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is do not start it looking to make money. There's a whole lot of expense when you start podcasting. Recording equipment, recording space, just giving up time, transportation, whatever it is, it's a lot of expense to start. But I think it's a lot of research. You have to, you start recording your podcast and then you find out who exactly is listening to your podcast. So when you have, whether it be age, race, gender, whatever it is, or location, you're then able to research, okay, what product or what service, would love to be a part of, this, my listenership. So I think that would be it. But you have to build so much, I would say, because again, like you said, our market hasn't really been defined yet. It still bothers me that everybody has Maggie at home, and I don't know an African person making money off Maggie here. It's every person. There's certain things that all Africans use, and we're not making money from it. There are no scholarships, there are no events. When we have parades, I don't see any of these brands. We get Western Union, we get MoneyGram, which is dope, but like certain things in households we don't see. So I think we have a lot more, we have a lot of steps to go, but I think building your core audience and then finding out who exactly would love to be a part of that.
And to add on to what Bawo was saying, when we started the podcast initially, we were never really in it for the bread, but the relationships we've had with artists and brands and so forth, the bread has presented itself. But instead of just focusing on ourselves, I think we've done what we can to try to build like an infrastructure so other people in the space could benefit from the knowledge that we've gained as well. So a lot of the sponsorships we've offered to friends or whatever have been based on conversations we've had privately or whatever. So the reality is there's really no infrastructure for, like he was saying earlier, there's no infrastructure for, if Ekua was looking to partner with, the leading food brand in Kenya, like there's no pipeline to do that unless she goes to Kenya herself or has a
Sounds like a business idea.
Right. Let me find
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, we talk about it all the time. There's little ways that we've been able to help people figure it out, but there's a lot more that can be done because it can't just be us.
And I'm not sure if you guys caught attention. I think a big thing is finding your friends who have businesses. There's a brand that makes socks, MOA socks. We've worked with them. There are different brands you can use where it's just like, it doesn't have to be a large amount of money, but something where they're giving you a little bit and you're showing love. So sponsorship starts in a certain place, and obviously when you create your package to the bigger brands, you can let them know I've worked with A, B, and C. It's worked well for them, and obviously you can take advantage of that. So start little as well.
And don't fake your data because they can check it.
Definitely not. Definitely.
I know a lot of people that we've tried to put on that weren't transparent with us about their actual listenership, and deals will blow up in your face, and people talk. So yeah.
And also I think like reaching out to brands, like don't be afraid to reach out to brands. Like I've had, and also don't think of it just like for like money as in like, someone giving you cash in hand. Like think of, trade-offs. So for instance, because I'm interested in travel, I would appreciate more a hotel to give me a free stay versus them giving me like money. And they're probably more willing to give me a hotel stay than to pay me to talk about their hotel on my podcast. And you may know of Patreon. where like I think a lot of podcasts are using that now, but you have to have like a lot of listens and downloads. But essentially, people give you different levels of money for different things. So you can have an episode that you do an exclusive interview where people that pay maybe $10 a month are the only people that can access that content. You know, they can get like a free postcard or something. So it's different levels of, I guess, money, and then you give them different things for that amount of money. So that's a way that I've seen podcasters make money.
I mean, definitely what they've all said, and just learning to present yourself, you know, making a pitch deck for the podcast, even just making sure that you know that you can even have like a sponsorship, like where your sponsorship would technically be. Would it be within the podcast? Would it be like your own ad that you create for them, you know, using your voice? Because like voiceover work is a job, you know, people do this on the radio. So just thinking about the different avenues that you can kind of use what you're already doing to make money.
A lot of podcasts